When I listened to this story and I read it, and I've heard it, of course, like you have over many, many years, it suddenly hit me that these two men on the way to Emmaus reminded me not only of myself, but I think of all of us. For we're all on a journey. We're on a journey to eternal life. And every day presents different circumstances in all of our lives that can change us to make us better or make us worse. We hear about these two men who had something so empowering and powerful that happened to them when they saw that Christ had been killed and crucified. They were so moved. And here they're discussing this and they're overwhelmed by what happened. But then Jesus walks with them. And they don't recognize him. They don't recognize him until he blesses the bread and gives it to them. And it stopped. Those things stopped, and I had to ask myself, what about myself? What about ourselves? Do we recognize the Christ, the risen Christ, that walks among us? Every single day, Christ is walking with every single one of us. There are no exceptions to that. Some of you may believe it, some of you may not. I believe it. Because I've had experiences on my own. When the circumstances and things happened in my life, I had to step back and say, what's going on? And I had to listen. I had to, you might say, zipper up my lips and keep quiet so I could hear. Look at your own personal lives. Look at the things that have happened to you. Whether it's been something in the medical field, could have been 100 different things. You might have lost your home. You might have been bankrupt. A lot of things could have gone wrong in all of our lives. But what do we do when that happens? Do we scream and holler and go ranting around? Or do we stop? Really stop. And quietly listen to our own hearts. Listen to that risen Christ within us. So many times I believe that we have these difficulties and things that happen in our lives that I think God gives that to us as a little trial. How are we going to handle these things? And the best way I have found, you may have found other ways, but the best way I found is you step back, go to something like our meditation chapel here on the campus, or you go to the quiet of your own room, or wherever else it might be, and you stop and listen to what the Christ, the risen Christ, is saying to you and to me. But do we do that? Do we make that Christ come alive in our lives? And when we do, he does come alive. And what happens is when Christ comes alive in your life as well as my life, what happens is we all become his lights in this world. This world is kind of being filled with more darkness than light. But we have a responsibility as a follower of Jesus Christ, the risen Christ, to listen to him, to really listen to what he has to tell us. One of the best ways of finding how he can reinforce his own word, we go back to the scriptures, we go back to the Gospels and see how he lived his life, what he has to say to us. We're not strangers to him. He walks with us day in and day out. You have troubles, you have difficulties, you have good times. He's there. But too often, we don't always recognize him. Do we recognize him in our brothers and sisters whom we work with day after day, who we see in the classroom, or at our work, or in our neighborhood grocery, or wherever else it might be? Do we see Christ in other people? Pull away all those other things that block our vision, so we can open our eyes and recognize that every one of us have Christ with us. We have been made in the image and likeness of God. And there are no exceptions to that. Regardless of the person's color, regardless of the person's creed, whatever else it might be. We're God's children. And it's important for each of us to come to that realization as the two disciples were learning on the way to Emmaus. Their eyes were not open until the breaking of the bread. Hopefully our eyes are open every single day to look beyond the surface to look deeper into those who come into our lives and say, yes, Christ is here. I have to be a light of Christ in my daily life, no matter where I work or whatever else I do. And it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But God gives us that grace. That wonderful grace that allows us to have the free will to choose the risen Christ or not. And what will our choice be?